Hello everybody and welcome to another squishy, squirmy episode of ScreamTastic Horror Review. I'm your host Kendall the Horror Explorer, and today we are going to look at 1976's Squirm. But before we get started, as always, if you like what you hear, support the channel. It's free. Just like, subscribe, and share. It goes a long way and it's definitely appreciated. Man, the 70s were a weird time. This movie, Squirm, is part of a subgenre of horror films about nature striking back. The 70s were full of these kind of films. We got Frogs, Night of the Lupus, which is about killer bunny rabbits, Food of the Gods, about killer rats, Empire of the Ants, about, you guessed it, killer ants. And then we had better known movies like Piranha and, of course, Jaws. And you know, killer sharks, I get. Killer ants, okay. Killer rats, that's cool, but killer worms? Alright, so let's start this extended review by checking out the main characters. First, we have Jerry, her sister Alba, and their mother Naomi. They live next to a worm farm owned by Roger and his dad Willie. That may not work out for them so great in this movie. Okay, and the first thing you're going to notice are these god-awful southern accents. Take a listen.
That's real kind of you, Roger. But isn't it too hot for that kind of work?
No, ma'am, Miss Saunders, ma'am.
Well, come in for a cold drink.
As soon as I finish this bunch.
Ooh, I've seen this porn. And today's a big day for Jerry because she has a male friend traveling 800 miles from New York City to visit her so they can go antiquing. Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Alma comes down the stairs now. Alma teases her sister for going out of her way to pick up a man. And now Roger comes in through the front door, all sweaty from his yard work. The way Roger looks at Jerry, you can tell he has a crush on her. Jerry asks if she can borrow Roger's truck, and Alma lets it slip that she's going to pick up a man. Roger looks hurt by this, but agrees to let her borrow it. Before Jerry leaves, her mother asks her to go in town and pick up a big block of ice for the fridge. What is this, a Breath of the Wild quest? Jerry leaves and gets into the truck, which has the words Willie's Bait painted on the side. That's a little on the nose as she goes and picks up some man who agreed to come all the way down from New York City to see her, you know what I mean? Now we see the Greyhound bus that Mick is traveling on. The bus has to stop because there are trees down on the road. The bus driver says they have to turn around because the roads are blocked. Mick asks to be left off here. He grabs all of his belongings, which consist of 4 bags, a fishing rod, and a tennis racket.
Where are you going?
Fly Creek.
Well, it's straight ahead about 5 miles. Flooded out. You're gonna need a boat to go over there. You probably got one somewhere.
Now we get a montage of city boy Mick trying to find his way through the woods to a location he's never been without a compass or a map. Call in the killer worms! As he's walking through the woods, he falls into a hole chest-high water, and suddenly Jerry is there to laugh at him. How did these two even meet? It's 1976, so Tinder's not happening. He's in New York, she's in Georgia. Anyways, that's not important in a movie about flesh-eating worms. So they go back to Roger's truck, and as they make their way in town, Jerry asks about his trip.
Tell me about your trip. Did you have a good time on that airplane?
That fancy flying devil machine you call an aeroplane? So they make their way to town, and Jerry goes to get the block of ice from the ice store? I don't know. Mick stays in the car and sees the locals boarding up windows and cleaning up after the storm. Mick decides to go into the diner that's right next to the ice store. Inside, we see the sheriff playing a game of grab ass with the waitress, who just smiles and walks away. Mick sits down at the bar, and everyone is talking about the storm, and Mick orders an egg cream.
I'd like a large egg cream and a glass of water, please.
Well, I've got water, but what did you say? An egg cream?
An egg cream. It's just chocolate syrup, a little milk, and some seltzer water.
Sounds gross. I love how the extras with lines in the scene either flub them.
Yep, that was the worst storm we've had since I was knee-high to a duck.
Or just speak absolute gibberish.
You know, I ain't ever seen anybody roaring to get that fast off of that bay. You know, they look like the south end of a northbound mule.
What the hell did he say? Anyways, Mick gets his egg cream, which contains neither eggs or cream, and starts to sip on it when he spots a worm in his drink. He spits it out and complains to the waitress and gets thrown out by the sheriff. He returns to the truck and Jerry is back with the giant block of melting ice. The trick here is to stay in the shadows. Mick asks Jerry why everyone in town is so untrusting.
Hey, why is everybody around here so unfriendly?
Huh? Oh, they're very nice people, really. It's just that they're suspicious of strangers. Tourists come and they pollute the bay and the lagoon.
I'm not a tourist. I'm a Libra.
Jesus Christ, where are the fucking worms at? They arrive back at the house and Mick goes to the kitchen. He puts the block of ice and sits it in the fridge. That way it'll keep everything nice and cool and become a big watery mess later. Jerry looks at the clock on the wall but remembers that the power went out and asks Mick what time it is. So the clocks on the walls are electric? Well, she realizes that they're running late and they have to get over to the antique dealer whose name is Aaron Beardsley.
Hey, Jerry, wait a minute. What about seeing the stuff in your garage?
We'll see that when we get back.
Well, Jerry and Mick walk outside and hear Roger arguing with his dad as they jump into their baby blue station wagon, complete with wood paneling. Jerry and Mick start to drive off, but before they can get far, Roger stops them. He is pissed at Jerry. Apparently, the truck Jerry borrowed had crates full of worms, 100,000 of them to be exact, and now they're all missing.
Them crates is all empty. Every last damn one of them.
But I never left the truck.
How many worms were there?
I can tell you how many worms there was. There was 100,000 worms.
Jerry apologizes. She's not sure how it could have happened, but she doesn't care. She's got Mick now, and they return to the car so they can ride out to Mr. Beardsley's house. They arrive at Aaron Beardsley's house. They knock on the door, but no one is answering. Then they walk around the house, looking through the window, walking to the backyard, but it seems like no one is home. As they continue to search the ground, Jerry stumbles upon a skeleton. They leave it there and decide to go tell the sheriff. Now we see Sheriff Reston, who we previously met in the diner with his hand in the cookie jar, so to speak, with Naomi. Jerry and Mick show up. Not sure how they found out he was there, but the details are meaningless. Get to the killer worms already. Jerry tells Sheriff Reston about the body they found. Reston already dislikes Mick from their incident at the diner, but agrees to go check it out. When they arrive back at the property, the skeleton is gone. Those damn pranking worms. Now Sheriff Reston is pissed and wants Mick to leave town. Jerry tries to explain that she also saw the skeleton, but Reston thinks that she is just digmatized and tells her to stop lying. Okay, and we're back at Jerry's house. We see a shirtless Mick trying on dry clothes in front of Alma. Ah, he's here for the old 2-for-1 special. And why didn't Mick have any of his own clothes? He was carrying like 4 bags and he was going to be there for 5 days. Again, it's a movie about flesh-eating worms. Just move on with your life. Alma lights up a joint and shares it with him. She keeps referring to him as being from the city. I love how all the Southerners in this movie refer to Mick as coming from the city, like there's only one city. Anyways, Mick picks out a hideous shirt that could double later for a tablecloth. So while Alma and half-naked Mick are getting high together, where is Jerry? So now Jerry and Mick are together again, and they're on the case of the missing Mr. Beardsley. They go to the local hangout spot for the town, a bar called Quigley's, and everyone is there. Jerry, Mick, Alma, and Roger. Jerry asks Mr. Quigley if he has seen Mr. Beardsley, and he admits that he has not been in there all day. He asks Mick if he is interested in buying some antiques, and proclaims he's got some stuff in the back that he wants to show him. That'll
make your mouth water like a horse with his nose in a shoulder bag.
Mr. Quigley.
What the fuck does that even mean? Well, Mick spots Roger and they go over to his table. They feel real bad about losing 100,000 worms, and Mick invites Roger to go fishing with them later, which Roger accepts. So Mick and Jerry return to the house. She's making him lunch. He says he wants something more than lunch, and Jerry says,
Tuna fish salad will have to do for now.
trust me, I'm sure the motivation for Mick to travel 800 miles was so he could get some of Jerry's tuna fish sandwich, just not the one she's serving for lunch. Jerry also brings him a nice tall glass of milk to drink with his tuna fish. Milk from the fridge that is being cooled by a melting block of ice. Nothing like tuna fish and tepid milk. Ugh. After lunch, Mick decides to vomit. No, really. After lunch, Mick decides to go check out the back of Roger's truck. He's not sure how 100,000 worms can just get up and vanish. So Jerry and Mick break into the back of the truck and find a skeleton. Jerry wants to tell the sheriff, but Mick quickly realizes that that is a dumb idea. So now they're out in the woods and are meeting up with Roger to go fishing. Jerry is nervous. They get into the boat and go out into the water. Mick complains about how bad the water smells.
And that's nothing like fresh salt air. What is that smell anyway?
Low tide. You can't even swim in here. I don't know how the fish stay alive.
Maybe they come from New York.
Where are the fucking worms? Mick opens the box of bait and is disgusted by the worms. He asks if Roger would mind putting the worm on his hook, but Roger refuses. He says he too is also disgusted by the worms. So Jerry grows a set and decides she'll do it. Mick, seeing this, decides that, you know what, he can do it after all. He picks out a worm from the container, and when he goes to put it on the hook, the worm bites the shit out of him.
Are you all right?
A little mother bit me. Jesus Christ.
Mick, are you sure it wasn't the hook?
Jerry, the thing bit right into my arm.
Well, they usually don't bite hard enough to penetrate the skin.
It must be that soft, delicate New York skin of Mick's. So that bite is it for Mick. He decides he wants to leave the boat to tend to his wounds. Jerry offers to join him, but he insists that she stays on the boat with Roger. They row back to the dock and Mick gets out. Jerry is visibly upset about being left alone with Roger, but Mick don't give a shit because he's from the city. Jerry and Roger go back out. Jerry is starting to fish while Roger just sits there and lays on his side, creepily watching her. Jerry accidentally knocks over the container of worms. Neither of them notice. Mick has made it back to Roger's truck. He goes inside to the skeleton. He pulls the head off the skeleton and sticks it under his shirt. He goes to leave the truck, but Alma is there. She asks what's under his shirt, and he shows her the head. Back on the boat, we get a shot of the worms on the move, and then we get a shot of Roger making his move. He is right up on her ass and tell her he has a surprise for her.
You know, I got a surprise for you.
Really? What is it?
Yeah, I told you it's the surprise.
Roger takes her fishing pole and puts it down. He turns her around and wraps his arms around her. Jerry is giving pushback. He tries to kiss her, but she shoves him down. He falls onto the worms. He screams as the worms start to crawl into his skin and onto his flesh. And now, guys, this is actually a good special effect / prosthetic work. Turns out the makeup artist is a young Rick Baker, who would go on to do the special effects for the movie An American Werewolf in London, and ultimately would win 7 Academy Awards for Best Makeup. So yeah, the effect is good. Roger jumps into the water screaming and runs off. Jerry runs home and asks Mama if Mick is there. She says he hasn't returned, and Jerry goes upstairs to take a shower. Meanwhile, Mick and Alma are trying to identify the head they have, and they decide to go to the dentist office. They knock, but no one is there. But Mick is determined, so he decides to commit breaking and entering and finds a window that is open and crawls through it. Once inside, they start going through the cabinets.
May I ask what you're looking for?
X-rays. There's 3 teeth missing from the top of the skull.
Right, so the plan is to look over every single x-ray the dentist has to find the one with the same missing teeth as the skull. And what luck! The very first set of x-rays Mick finds matches the skulls they're carrying, and Mick determines that the skull belongs to Aaron Beardsley.
Who the fuck are you?
Coming this fall, CSI, Backwater Redneck Bullshit. Only on the Travel Channel.
So now we see a topless Jerry about to take a shower. She turns the faucet on, but no water comes out. From above her, worms start to come out of the shower head, but Jerry doesn't see this. She turns the water off and the worms reverse back into the shower head as if someone pressed rewind. Mick and Alma return home. Jerry takes Mick aside and tells him how the worms attacked Roger, and she's worried. So they decide to go to the worm farm to see if Roger is okay. Before they can leave, Mama comes downstairs and reminds them that they all have dinner plans, and Mama tells Jerry to be sure to invite Roger over too.
Alma, try to think of an extra side dish. Lord only knows when's the last time we had 2 hungry men around here.
Horny bitch! So Jerry and Mick are back on the case and are riding out to the worm farm. Once there, Mick tells Jerry to sit inside the car while he searches the grounds. So Mick is off, he's looking, he's searching, he's calling for Roger. He's searching the property when he notices something behind some crates. It's Roger's dad, and he's very much dead. Mick kneels down next to him and can see his chest rising and falling. He opens his shirt to reveal that Dad is filled with worms. #gross. Mick runs back to the car and they take off. Destination, sheriff's office, because up to this point, the sheriff has been so helpful. They arrive at the sheriff's office and are told that he's out having dinner at Casa Roma. I mean, I know this is a small town, but only one cop. So they arrive to interrupt Sheriff Reston's dinner, but he doesn't care. He doesn't believe them. All he cares about is banging the chick he's having dinner with. Why is everyone so horny? I guess in the 70s there wasn't much else to do but to get high and get down. I don't know. So before heading home, Jerry and Mick decide to briefly do another search of Beardsley's property. And while there, they find some bloody clothes and Mick figures it out.
Roger must have followed us here, spying on us all the time like a little kid. And then he saw this. But why take the skeleton?
That was a surprise. A surprise he was telling me about on the boat.
She thinks that the surprise Roger wanted to show her was the skeleton, but I'm pretty sure he had a different boner in mind. Alright, they arrive home just in time for dinner. Mick, Jerry, and Alma are there, and Mama gets upset when she realizes that Roger isn't coming. She says he's such a fine young man. She is so upset that she makes her own daughter get out of what would have been Roger's seat.
That's Roger's seat, dear.
She has a real lady boner for Roger. So now they're eating dinner in silence. We get a shot of the outside of the house and we hear a tree creaking very loudly. Suddenly, the tree falls over on top of the house in the dining room. So according to the Internet Movie Database, what they did was they actually built this as an add-on to the actual house and then literally dropped a tree on it while the actors were inside of it. Listen to a snippet of the director's commentary.
Now, that was that crane dropping, and they were really dangerously close. What you're seeing, that tree weighed tons. And in order to sell that, we had to actually do it. They were, like you would never get away in a Hollywood movie. There's no way that a studio would take a chance of having actors that close to a gag like that.
You think, Jeff? Anyways, after a moment or two, Mick goes outside to see what the fuck happened. He finds thousands of worms at the base of the tree. I guess the idea here is that the worms knocked over the tree. Boy, I would have loved a shot of the worms working one of those two-man saws trying to cut the tree down. That would have been hilarious. So Mick goes to the garage to get some gasoline, but when he returns seconds later, every single worm has vanished.
Something is making the worms go crazy. Just driving them right up out of the ground. Electricity.
There isn't any.
Yes, there is. The power lines that fell down are still sending juice into the ground. That's thousands of volts. With soaking wet mud to act as a conductor. Yeah, and as soon as the light hits them, they disappear.
Sure. Mick says he wants to get some plywood to cover the doors, and Jerry gives him directions to an old rice mill that would have some plywood. So off he goes. Back at the house, Alma's near-death experience has made her want to take a shower. So she goes upstairs, turns the shower on as Jerry did earlier, but no water comes out. Again, worms come out from the shower head, but Alma doesn't notice this, and she just decides to leave. We catch up with Mick getting the plywood. He's walking there, so he has to carry it back to the house, and we get shots of him going through the woods, carrying two large, flimsy pieces of plywood up a hill, when suddenly Roger grabs him. He picks Mick up and throws him off the hill to the ground below. Roger picks up one of the flimsy pieces of plywood, throws it at Mick, hits him in the face, and knocks him out. Okay, so Mick is out of the picture for a minute and we are back at the house. Mama hears noises coming from upstairs and Alma remembers she forgot to turn the faucet off. She's happy because she thinks the water has come back on. Alma slowly goes up the stairs. She reaches the bathroom. She slowly opens the door when a 6-foot-tall wave of hundreds of thousands of worms burst out. Okay, so the worms were able to fill up the entire bathroom to the ceiling. Yes, they were. So now we're back with Glassjaw Mick. He finally wakes up and it's dark now. He takes his shirt off and wraps it around a branch and we're all treated to his hairy ginger nipples. You're welcome, ladies. He gets up and makes his way back to the house. And if you guys are wondering how the sheriff is making out, well, he took his date back to the jail cell and they hooked up there. They're literally in a cell, on a bed, in sheets. So these two are laughing, carrying on. Meanwhile, the room is filling up with worms and they are totally oblivious.
I'm not doing anything.
The worms eat them, yay! But the worm rampage isn't over yet. We now get a shot of Quigley's, and he's ready to close up shop. He tells everyone it's time to get out when the worms attack. I mean, I assume they attack. People are screaming and jumping up on the counters. You don't really see anything. It's so gruesome, right? So we're back in the kitchen with Jerry. She lights a lamp, and we see that Roger is watching her from the window. If Jerry had any kind of peripheral vision, she would see this as well. Jerry walks to the living room where Mama is knitting. She asks her if she closed all the doors.
Is the front door closed? Uh-huh. But I left the back door open.
You dirty old bitch. So Jerry goes to close it but walks right into Roger, who grabs her. Mick finally makes it back to the house. When he arrives, he sees there are thousands of worms everywhere just surrounding the house. He goes inside, lights a candle, and calls for Jerry, but he gets no reply. So he goes to the living room and sees just thousands of worms everywhere, all over the place. He looks and he sees Mama is dead, completely covered in worms. Mick now goes upstairs. He sees the attic and thinks to search for Jerry in there. He pulls the ladder down and starts to climb when Roger reaches out from the attic and grabs him. They struggle and Mick sticks the lit candle in his face and Roger lets him go. Mick runs down the stairs, but the mass of worms has grown and they are now coming up the stairs. He's stuck. Roger grabs him from behind, more struggling, and Mick manages to push Roger off the stairs and into the sea of worms. He is up to his shoulder in worms and slowly sinks below. Mick goes back upstairs and finds Jerry is tied up. He releases her, and she is a hot mess. Mick keeps telling her, it's okay, baby. Yeah, your mom and your sister were eaten alive by worms, and now they're hungry for us too, but honey, it's fine. Now we see Roger crawling up the stairs covered in worms. Mick and Jerry decide to go out a window and onto a tree. Seeing what worms did to the last tree, is that really a good idea? Jerry gets out the window and makes it to the tree branch. As Mick tries to leave, Roger grabs him and bites the crap out of his leg. Mick repeatedly bashes Roger in the head with a flashlight. Yeah, no clue where the flashlight came from, as we never see him with it, but fuck it, it's the end, who cares? Mick makes it to the tree and all is well. So now it's the next day. Jerry and Mick are asleep in the tree when someone from the power company shows up to tell them that the power has been restored. All the worms are completely gone, vanished. And we actually see that Alma survived this by hiding in a worm-proof chest. So Mick, Jerry, and Alma all reunite, and it's the end. And ladies and gentlemen, that is Squirm. What's to say about this movie? The acting was okay. The writing was okay. The makeup effects were decent, but there were very little of it in the film. That said, there is some entertainment value to be had if you're into watching cheesy horror movies, that is. I'll give this movie 5 screams out of 10. Well, that'll do it for the extended review of Squirm. Folks, if you like what you hear, don't forget to like and subscribe. Again, it's much appreciated. You can also follow me on Twitter, follow me on Facebook. And remember, life is short and the world is full of horror movies, so get exploring.